Hi, welcome to Sabbath School Daily, where we have been studying from this lesson right here, Psalms. This week we're studying from lesson number 6, which has the title, I Will Arise, and today is Wednesday's lesson, which has the title, Pour Out Your Indignation. Today is one of the most difficult lessons to cover because it deals with a topic that is so out of character, it's so out of tune with the rest of Scripture that it makes you wonder sometimes, especially if you read it at face value. If the only thing that you read in the Bible are these Psalms, you're going to walk away thinking, well, this is pretty violent. This is not a Bible, not a book that I want my kids to read, for example. And these are the Psalms where King David is so angry about the oppression, the wickedness, the pride, the vileness of his opposers, of those who are oppressing not only him, but those around him, that he takes that anger and expresses it up to God. And it comes out as being quite violent, quite aggressive. You'll see that in the texts that are mentioned in today's lesson. I'll read you, for example, one that appears here in Psalm 69, verse 22 through 28 that says this, "Let their table become a snare before them, and their well-being a trap. Let their eyes be darkened so that they do not see, and make their loins shake continually. Pour out your indignation upon them, and let your wrathful anger take hold of them. Let their dwelling place be desolate. Let no one live in their tents, for they persecute the ones you have struck, and talk of the grief of those you have wounded. Add iniquity to their iniquity, and let them not come into your righteousness. Let them be blotted out of the book of the living, and not be written with the righteous." That is rough. That is harsh coming from David. And that's precisely where so many people will read these and say, well, how do you understand this? Is this the God of the Bible? No, this is a man that is crying out to his God precisely because he himself refuses to be the exactor of vengeance. And he is crying out to his God, the only one that he feels can hear him, that can understand him. He's crying out to him in pain, in sorrow for all of the pain inflicted by these people. So while I do not believe in taking vengeance into my own hands, I do believe that one day God, the ultimate judge, he will exact justice. He will exact retribution in the way that he sees fit. But that doesn't impede me of being angry. I get angry when I see others being unjust. I get angry when I witness corruption. All of these things evoke anger and frustration in the eyes of those that are witnessing it. But differently than what many people would do, the psalmist, he doesn't take matters into his own hands. And this is a king that we're talking about. Of course, there are moments during his reign that he did exact justice, and that was kingly justice. But ultimate justice is something that comes only from God, and we have to understand that we are not called to take these matters into our own hands. He will do enough. He will do it. God is the righteous judge. That is what is going on in these different psalms. Look at what the lesson has to say about it. Some psalms beseech God to take vengeance on individuals and nations who intend to harm or who have already harmed the psalmists or their people. The Psalms can sound perplexing because of their harsh language and apparent discord with the biblical principle of love for enemies. Yet, the psalmist's indignation in the face of opposition is a good one. It means that the psalmist took right and wrong more seriously than did many people. He cares, even greatly, about the evil that is done in the world, not just to himself, but to others as well. And this is something that we need in us as well. We need to be able to look around and feel indignant at what has been done to others around us, and then take action, not in distributing vengeance, but in caring for those people, in harboring them, in providing safe havens for them, in caring and providing for them. That's what the Lord calls us to do. That is precisely why the psalmist is crying out to God to exact vengeance and not taking it into his own hands. I hope that comes across clearly here. The lesson then continues. However, nowhere does the psalmist suggest himself to be the agent of vengeance. Instead, he leaves retribution solely in God's hands. The Psalms evoke the divine covenant curses found in Deuteronomy 27, verse 9 through 16, and you're going to find that in Deuteronomy, really, 27 through 31, the covenant that God makes with the children of Israel, and implore God to act as he has promised. The Psalms are prophetic proclamations about God's impending judgment. They are not solely the psalmist's prayers. Psalm 137 reflects the announcements of divine judgment on Babylon, as seen in the prophets. The devastation that the Babylonians brought to other nations would turn back on them. The The Psalms convey divine warnings that evil will not go unpunished forever. Whenever you find in the Bible, especially here in the Old Testament, the prophets speaking of divine judgment to nations that have been in the wrong, nations that have acted as agents of evil, agents of oppression, you'll see that later on in God's time, perhaps not in the time of the prophets, not in when the people would have preferred it, but in God's time, justice is exacted by other instruments of God's justice. So it does happen. There is accountability. There is judgment. It just doesn't happen on our time frame. Ultimately, we know that there will be an accounting in the final judgment, either for those that go to heaven with Jesus, the righteous, those who believed in him and accepted what was done for them on the cross and what has been happening for them in the holy sanctuary today, or for those who will only be resurrected at the second resurrection, called in the Bible the resurrection of death. In either case, there is justice going on. God is that judge. Please continue studying your lesson. There's a lot in here today. Look up the Bible verses. This is going to probably make you wonder a little bit. These verses can be quite harsh, but remember what's going on. Remember that the psalmist is crying out to his God with his real, raw feelings, letting the Lord know that he can't take it anymore. But he is not going against God's law. He is not taking these matters into his own hands. So study this, know what to say when you are asked questions about this, because they are deep questions and they can be quite confusing if you're not prepared to answer them. Perhaps practice a little bit. Think up questions that you would ask and then come out with biblical answers to answer those questions. I'm sure that the Lord will guide you in that. Remember to comment down below. I love hearing from you. I like looking at your answers, your questions, your comments. That really brightens my day. And also please remember to like, to share, and to subscribe to our videos. We release one every day. And I hope to see you again here tomorrow for Sabbath School Daily.